Joining us now is the man who came up with that remarkable line that still resonates and causes people to have goosebumps and crying like I am today. My good friend Al Michaels back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Al?
You know, it's great to celebrate the anniversary with you, Rich, every year. I think we started it at 40.
Yeah,
so let's just keep it going another 7. But book me for February the 22nd, 2030, and we can really exult and look back at something that, it's people have texted me today and said, it just doesn't get old. So I write back, I said, yeah, the only thing that gets old is me. But I mean, it's hard to believe that was 43 years ago. But, I listen to that, and I feel I'm in the third person. And, of course, I've heard it thousands of times. But it's like I kind of feel the way a lot of people do when they hear that. But it's like somebody else is doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So what a moment, obviously. And Sports Illustrated, in 2000, ranked it as the greatest sports moment of the 20th century. So a number of years after that, we're still, I think it's still, for me, obviously, number one. As you know, it's on the top of the shelf. And people say to me, well, what's the crowning moment of your career and everything? And I go, nothing will ever top that. Just the confluence of events.
No doubt. And, obviously, we all know what else you've called. And one of the many things I love about you, Al, is you just remember so much and so many details as if it was yesterday. So we're talking at 1:23 Eastern time. We're talking 1:23 Lake Placid time. What were you doing 43 years ago at this very moment, if you can guesstimate?
Like 1:30, close to 1:30 in the afternoon. So the game started at 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So people forget that it was, tape delayed. We came on the air. It was at 5 o'clock. We were taping the game, and then they aired it at 8 Eastern time. Of course, the world was so different then, and people could keep from finding out what had taken place. But I think at about this time, 43 years ago, Rich, I walked over to the arena because we were at a hotel, the Hilton, which was maybe 4 or 5 blocks away in Lake Placid, with Ken Dryden, the great Hall of Fame goalie who was my partner on that telecast. And I remember one of the things we talked about, or at least I said to Ken, was hopefully it's only like 3-1 in the middle of the second period, Soviets. And we could keep an audience, because my big fear, of course, was that it was going to be something like 6-0, and then nobody would care about it. But I do remember having that conversation with Ken on the way over to the arena. So, at the end of the first period, Mark Johnson had scored that goal right at the horn to tie it 2-2. At the end of the second period, it was 3-2. Jim Craig, of course, made save after save in the second period to keep the game close. And we know the rest. Mark Johnson scores the tying goal, and Mike Eruzione scores what turned out to be the game-winning goal exactly 10 minutes into the third period. But that was the conversation that Kenny and I had on the way over.
And again, Al, as you point out, different times, tape-delayed broadcast, kids, college kids going up against the Soviets, just another word that dates it. But what about that barn, right? I mean, you don't get games of this magnitude played in a barn like the one in Lake Placid. What was it like in that building when you walked in there?
Well, you don't get the Olympics in places like Lake Placid anymore. So Lake Placid had hosted the Olympics in 1932, and they won the rights to host it in 1980. I don't think you'll ever see an Olympics in a venue like that. I mean, it's a little hamlet, and you could barely, get in or out. I mean, the access on roads was not like it is today for any venue that would host an Olympic Games. But right across the street was the high school in Lake Placid, and the track was turned into a rink, and that's where Eric Heiden, they turned it into a skating rink and speed skating, and Eric won 5 gold medals across the street. So then this was nothing but a field house, and I guess they've really cleaned it up. And I know a lot of games are played there, youth hockey and minor league hockey and the rest. But they've cleaned it up. But then it was simply like a 7,000 or 8,000 seat arena, which had lower bowl seating and a small balcony. And our broadcast booth was on a kind of a ramshackle platform in the front of that balcony, shaking like crazy at the end of that game. But you'll never see anything like that again right now, because obviously to host the Olympic Games, you're going to have to spend billions and billions of dollars. to either upgrade your facilities or build new ones. But that was the last of its breed. The other thing I'm thinking about today, Rich, is that here we were, part of what made that what it was, the Cold War was so icy at that point. The United States and the Soviet Union, and here we are 43 years later. Think about this. Still at loggerheads with Russia, at least with Putin anyway. Crazy.
And then, obviously, Al Michaels here on the Rich Eisen Show. That's also obvious by the date, the 43rd anniversary of Miracle on Ice and the distinctive voice. Let's talk about Herb Brooks a little bit here. What was he like, Al? What was he like, Herb?
I thought he was a great man and a great coach. And what he was able to bring that team to that moment in time and have them play at their very best. And I thought, the movie, a lot of people know the story from the movie Miracle,
right, where
Kurt Russell played Herb Brooks. I think he did a magnificent job. I mean, I looked at Kurt in that movie and I thought, wow, that was Herb. Herb was a hockey coach. He was a very smart man. He was a well-rounded man, but he was a coach. And don't forget, after the Olympics, right after the Olympics, when Herb Brooks could have been king of the world at that point and been feted in every city and in the country and ticker tape parades and the rest. What was he doing 2 weeks later? He went to coach a club hockey team in Switzerland. This is what he did. And in 2000, when the 20th anniversary and Sports Illustrated ranked it as the top moment of the 20th century in sports, and we were all at Madison Square Garden. They had a big television show in the Garden. 14,000 people brought the team back. The place went crazy. And after they announced it was the number one event of the 20th century, I'm walking off the stage with Herb, and he said, "How could they rank that number one?" I said, "Herb, will you ever understand? What are you talking about?" So to him, all of the things that surrounded this game were on the side. He was a hockey coach. And look, he brought that team to that moment in time. And don't forget, because, the Soviet game, a lot of people still forget, that was the next to last game. They still had to beat Finland 2 days later. And the game that started at 11 o'clock in the morning on Sunday morning. And they trailed 2-1 at the end of the second period. And if they lost that game, they would not have won the gold medal and possibly not even a medal. And here you've got 20 minutes to go. And the only thing Herb said to the team in the locker room afterwards was, as they're ready to go back on the ice, "If you lose this game, you will take it to your grave." And of course, there was an adjective before grave. And they, and have truer words ever been spoken? Because had they lost that game, Rich, think about this. For the rest of their lives, all of these guys, they would have gone around and people would say, let me get this straight. You beat the Soviets and lost to Finland? So he had the right words at the right time, and he loved Ken Dryden too. So he was not very accessible to the rest of the media, but because of his relationship with Ken, we got to have a beer with him every other night during the off nights, and we learned a lot, obviously. But I had tremendous respect for them.
I mean, that must have been amazing to have a beer with Herb Brooks, and you talk about that movie. It is a terrific sports movie. And the line in the movie that I'm wondering if it also resonates with you, the actor Noah Emmerich, who's playing Craig Patrick, hands him, back the list of players that Herb had submitted to USA Hockey for the team. And he said, "You're missing the best players." And he said, "I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right ones." And,
correct.
And your statement earlier about, hey, you remember walking over to the arena with Ken Dryden and say it could be 6-0. You're so worried that, the Soviets blew out Team USA in Madison Square Garden in a friendly, if you will, prior to the Olympics. And so I'm wondering, do you remember people wondering if they did have the right team at the time still going into that game?
Going into that game, at least, they had tied Sweden with a goal in the last minute by Bill Baker in the opener. Wow. And then they had somehow beaten Czechoslovakia. They were the second best team in the league and killed them 7-3. So all of a sudden people are looking at this thing and go, whoa, what about this team? But you're right in terms of the Soviets had beaten the U.S. at Madison Square Garden in that, as you called it, friendly, by a score of, I think, 10-3, three nights before the Olympics. But that game could have been 15-0. But Dryden and I we'd been in Moscow to do some scouting before the Olympics, and I watched this team play, and they killed everybody. I mean, they were toying with people. They would win the game, 6-0. They could have won the game 20-0. So they were by far the best team in the world at that point. And Herb Brooks was able to, get him to the right place at the right time. But going into that game, if you looked at that game too, Rich, in so many ways, the Soviets outshot the United States 39-16. That's a 2.5-to-1 ratio. How many teams win games being outshot 39-16? That almost never happened.
Well, Jim Craig stood on his head that night, Al. I mean, he stood on his head, and then seeing his dad,
fantastic.
And then I mean, I'm getting goosebumps right now. I mean, the flag around Jim Craig. Come on, man. That was
I know. And that if you look at the cover of Sports Illustrated the following week, and just the way those guys were celebrating, and they're falling all over each other, and there's Jack O'Callahan with that great toothless grin, and they're just falling all over each other. And just to fast forward, in Sochi at the Olympics in 2014, I wanted to interview Tretiak, who was the goalie the best goalie in the world, and they pulled him after the first period in a terrible move. But I got him into the studio, and the one question I always wanted to ask was, you guys are standing at the blue line, and there's a cutaway shot. Our guys are exulting. They're going crazy. The crowd is going crazy. They're all over. They're falling all over each other. And the Soviets are just kind of standing pensively at the blue line with a lot of their chins on the knobs of their sticks, just watching this. And I said to Tretiak at Sochi, I said, "What were you guys thinking at that moment?" And he said, "We wished we were them. They were so happy." It was unbelievable because the Soviets, they were never in that position. They would win every game. And all of a sudden they're watching this and they're going, "We wished we were them."
Wished any of their
American hockey.
Right, and wished any of their wins would matter as much as this one did for USA. Wow.
Right.
Man. Wow. And then, so last one for you, Al. When did you first hear your call of "Do you believe in miracles?" Yes, became the root of the phrase that refers to the game forevermore as "Miracle on Ice"? When did you first hear, hey, they're calling it the Miracle on Ice, and you were the one who first put the word miracle into our consciousness? Al.
Well, I've told the story before, but because this game was on tape delay, and in those years you're worried about a tape machine breaking.
Oh, God.
As crazy as that seems, that Rune Arledge, who ran ABC Sports, made Dryden and me stay at the arena to announce the Sweden-Finland game, which started at 8 o'clock. So we're doing this into a tape machine, just in case there's a technical problem, playing the tape back of the U.S.-Soviet game. I mean, it sounds crazy right now. So I had no idea what was going on until I got back to the hotel and people started saying to me, "Wow, that was a great thing you said at the end of the game." Rich, I had to think about it because I was too busy doing the Sweden-Finland game, doing a second game, and I really didn't have time to digest what took place. So, fortunately, through the years, it kind of plays because I don't know if I screw that baby up. You got to live with that forever. But that was, again, one of those things, and we've talked about this before. People, said, "Did you think about it?" Did I think about it? I thought we were going to lose the game 10-3, and that was straight out of my heart and my fiber. And as I said to somebody at one time, I said, "That's the 9-year-old in me coming out." That's the same thing that a fan would say at that point. So here we are 43 years later, still talking about this thing.
I love you, Al Michaels. Thanks for taking the time, man. You're the
Anytime, Rich. You know that, man.
You're the best.
Care, man.
Take care. We'll see you.
Be good.
That's Al Michaels, everybody, right here. Miracle on Ice, 43rd anniversary.
Wow.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.